Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Gravity AI podcast, where we speak to real healthcare change makers in the industry that are taking on the challenge of delivering complex solutions in a complex environment and looking for actual outcomes for our patients and memberships in our healthcare system. I'm Mike Sutten. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Innovaccer. And I'm very happy to have one of those change makers I was just describing is Crystal Broj. She's the Enterprise Chief Digital Transformation Officer at the Medical University of South Carolina with a long, great career in healthcare, working for payers, working for health systems, working for certainly MUSC now, and some other nonprofit organizations. Crystal came to notice to us at Innovaccer is that she has created an enterprise transformation office at MUSC that has had some really early outstanding results in a world confused by AI and overstatement of ROIs and those things. So, Crystal, welcome. And would you mind explaining, going a little more detail on your background?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me today. Like you said, I'm the Enterprise Chief Digital Transformation Officer here in Charleston, South Carolina. Medical University of South Carolina is a 16-hospital system spanning the entire state of South Carolina. We're one of two nationally recognized telehealth organizations in the country. We have 6 different colleges on our medical campus for graduate studies, about 35,000 employees. I was brought in almost 4 years ago to start the digital transformation office here. We've gone from a party of 1 to a party of 10. And we lead digital transformation initiatives across patient access, client operations, revenue cycle. We're starting to do a little bit more back of the house stuff with HR and so on. Like you said, I came to healthcare through a non-traditional path. I was doing insurance. I did consulting, non-for-profit. I did some manufacturing and so on. But through all of that, my real superpower is looking at real problems for whoever I'm working for, in this case, patients, providers, and staff, and then putting technology on top of it to solve those problems.
That's great. And like industry-wide, I think everyone's recognized the success you've been having. And so when you join the organization, I mean, transformation is a tough thing because people don't necessarily welcome change. I'm not saying the healthcare industry is reluctance to change, but what were some of the setups that set the stage for how you created that transformation office? What were some of the critical, I guess, partnerships or priorities? You mentioned focusing on the patient and the member as being a thing, but how did you kind of organizationally get it to make it as successful as it's been?
Well, I was lucky enough to have a backing of the CEO and the executive team. And they knew that in order for us to get ready for the next big waves of things that were coming, we really needed to take into account transformation and looking the way we can use technology to help augment our staff to make them more human, actually. I think we talk about human-led, AI-backed. And I think that's a really great way of looking at it. So the biggest gap, I think, when we start talking about transformation is really confusing technology implementation with transformation. I think, and I think, Mike, you'll agree, too many organizations are ready to go buy technology before they clearly define the problem, right? Especially in this day and age where it's like, we need AI. And so it's like, oh, sure, here's AI. That doesn't solve anything. Really, the technology tends to be the easy part. The hard part comes in with workflow redesign, because we all know if the workflow is broken, putting any kind of technology on top of it is just going to make the broken part happen faster, and it's not going to solve anything. And so you really have to look at those workflows, look at how you redesign, talk about adoption, making sure that the governance is there so that you're putting the right things in at the right time, making sure that you have the change management. I think 50% of the work we do is change management, actually looking at the analysis and the design on the front end, and then making sure you carry it through all the way through to the end of the project and beyond, and actually, watching those measures. I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. And you just really have to start. If you start with a measurable operational problem and focus on the outcomes, that's how you succeed. because transformation is not an IT project. It just isn't. It's an organizational strategy. And if you take it that the entire organization is doing the transformation, you'll succeed. If you give it to IT or a digital department and you don't have all the players in place, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as a career IT person, there've been many times where we're paving cow paths, those same old cow paths. But I really like what you said about it's not a matter of just putting a new technology on top of a broken workflow, for example. Do you have like specific examples of some of the things that maybe broken's a tough word for it, but that had to be redesigned before you start applying the technology to it that you went after?
Yeah, there was one where we were looking at notice admissions, and that it was like, we can't get the coordination to happen, so we're going to get AI to do the coordination. So we brought everybody into a room and we mapped the process. Like, it goes from the hospital administrators or the hospital people on the floor to this, and rev cycle has to get involved, and then we have to get a doctor to review, and there's all these touch points of everything, and revenue cycle's like, well, we never get that. And the people are like, well, we send this to you and then we're waiting for a phone call. It's like, well, where does it go? Well, it goes into a queue in Epic. And like, okay, well, who looks at that queue? Well, nobody. That's why it's broken. No, the problem is it isn't routed to the right person. You don't need more technology. We have the technology. And just changing the workflow and when things are happening, when touch point, we actually at that point did not need to get technology. We just needed to use the technology that we had. So a lot of times when we start these projects, we get everybody in the room from everybody that the system touches, whether it's rev cycle, whether it's patient access. We've got whiteboards, and yes, I know we're in technology. I get that, but we still use paper and markers, and people respond to Post-it notes a lot better than some of that other stuff. And we do all of that first, and then we start going, okay, well, what's the biggest friction point? And then look at those friction points and then go, okay, if we put technology here, how much time are we saving? How can we measure it? How can we quantify that? Is it worth it? And then we start looking at tools and going, okay, well, what tool could do that? And would it be, and not let's do everything, right? Because there are plenty, you guys see it too. There are plenty of things that's like, we are a platform solution and we can do everything for you. Well, if you look at that, it's like, okay, well, here's an elephant. I have to eat the whole elephant. And that, nobody is ready for that. But if I look at this, or I look at, maybe it's something down here and it's like, this is the pain point. So let's look at that pain point and figure out what we could automate there so we can see a quick win and you can see that the product, whatever it is, works. And then we can add on this way or this way to automate more. But let's get something where we can get a win early. And from that point, you can be successful.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a little. First of all, I miss whiteboards like crazy. My office had 3 walls, all whiteboard. Yeah, look at you. Yeah, excellent. So it's interesting. So I think a lot of people, that are listening to this podcast are wondering, how exactly do you start? You talk about there's a lot of opportunities. Certainly, there's a lot of promise coming from the tech community. How did you go through with those? Those, like, I think you were talking about your revenue and registration side, that you put some AI to work in there, and you were able to generate, over $4 million in increased reimbursements. Was it wholly driven around ROI? Or how'd you do that prioritization? Because it's such, like you said, it's a huge elephant. And where do you start from, where are you going to slice off that first little piece? And what was your criteria for doing that?
Right. So we were looking at that point for something that we could just totally have make an impact on. So in that case, we had a technology we wanted to use. We were going to do prior authorization or prior registration. So literally it's, let me send you a notification saying you have an appointment in 3 days, Mike, and just confirm and cancel. Like, we started very basic. Yes, you could do that in EHR, but we found that about 24% of the people actually responded to that in an email. And so we wanted to text it and see how we could respond just with that. And we saw an increase of to over 50% of people responded to a text message. So that was fantastic. So we did that for 4 offices. Let's see if it works. And then it did. So then we added on and we go, okay, we'll add more offices and we'll add more offices. And at the same time, we started adding on other functionality because we're very agile. And so it's like, okay, while we'll do that, then let's make sure that you can put in your driver's license and your insurance card. Let's make sure that you can then, what else do? We want to collect before, collect your copay. And then it's like, well, if we could collect copay, let's see if we can collect an open balance or a partial open balance and make it easy for the patient so that they don't have to, you know what, when you get to the counter and you're done with your appointment, the last thing you want to do is stand around and go, oh yeah, let me pay for this now. I mean, that's just not a comfortable thing for the patient. Yeah. And it's also not fun for the person at the front office to go, can I have your credit card, please? And we're in the South, and so we're a lot more polite about it. So it's even worse, especially in a smaller town where it's like, oh, by the way, Betty, I see you at church on Sunday. Can you give me your credit card now? Let's go. You want to make sure that it's very comfortable for everybody. So being able to do that through the anonymity of a text message sometimes is much more appealing to people. And so with that, and we continue to roll out and figure out how we were going to do that. We rolled it out to all of our offices and saw great things. And then we monitored it. And we watched and see, are the offices using it? Are people actually adapting to it? And then we went and started looking, and some of the offices that we first started with were not high adopters. And we're like, but they were our champions. They were our first offices. Uh-huh. And so we talked to them and we shadowed, and we're watching people at the front desk, and they're like, oh, don't use that. Yeah, we don't use that. Like, what do you mean? You're telling the patients not to use it? And they're giving people the clipboard, right? And like, fill out the clipboard. Well, but they do that on their phone. They can do it. Yes, but that doesn't work. Well, no. And then tell us about a bug or something. And they said, well, we fixed that like 6 weeks ago. It's fine. You can do that. Or in other offices, like, oh, well, we just come to me. I'll take care of it. Because they have that relationship with patients. So they don't want to lose that to technology. And it's like, well, why are you giving it? Doctor likes the clipboard. Yeah. Well, we need to do that. Well, but this is what I've always done. Then it's like, well, why do you do that? Well, what am I going to do if I don't do the clipboard? And so when you automate things, you also have to think about how does that affect the workflow afterwards? And, what are we expecting people to do? We can't get rid of Sally half a day on Fridays because we've saved her time. But what could she be doing during the day to utilize that stuff too? Because is it fun to type stuff off what is written down on a clipboard? No, that's not fun. Nobody went to a job to do that. It's much more fun to be able to go, oh, you know what, Mike? I see that you need an appointment. Let me schedule your next appointment. Or you need to get in to see Dr. Smith, and he's not at this office, but let me look up and see what I could do. Because you're not as burdened with something else. So you can give much more better. That's not even a good thing. Better customer service, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we started. And that's where we started. And then we extended on to a bunch of other things. So that was our first RPA, AI agent kind of thing. And then we grew into a bunch of other things like our AI voice agent and things like that. So.
Yeah, so I think that's great. And I heard numerous times in your discussion there about the focus on patient convenience, patient satisfaction, streamlining their process. And so I was going to ask you. So, I'm sure it wasn't all butterflies and rainbows. And you mentioned and I've heard that in my 40 odd years in IT is this is a way we've always done it. Were there other traps that you projects got caught into where besides, well, that's just not the way we've done it in the past? So other things that folks can look out for, as we do the change management?
Well, it's also like, how is your setup today? How have you set up your EHR? We set it up a specific way for a specific reason at one time, but we've also set it up to not turn on rescheduling or not have scheduling, or we made the schedules the way the doctors wanted them, but we didn't turn online scheduling on because we didn't have it or we didn't want it or they weren't comfortable with it. And so then when you start to put a technology on top of it, that's great. We have technology that could online schedule. And then you go to grab the record and it's like, you're not allowed to do that for this doctor. It's turned off. And so what we did was put the technology on that it really shined a light on, we set up the EHR a different way and it's not able to adapt to that. So we had to go back and work department by department and go, okay, well, we need to look at your scheduling. We need to talk about that. And we had to talk to the schedulers and the office managers and the providers and go, this is what we want them so we can see them online. We want them so that they can be pulled up in, a document. We want to be able to let people schedule online mammograms, those kinds of things. So sometimes when you bring technology and you're putting a big magnifying glass on something that probably is a problem anyway, you really have to fix it in order to make the rest of it work smoothly.
Yeah, you mentioned the mammogram, the breast cancer screen program you guys set up. I think we were talking early, and it seemed very compelling story that you had. Could you go a little bit through kind of some of the solution detailing on that one as how it turned out to be such a success?
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm most proud of, not because it was so gigantic, but because we really made a difference in people's lives. The point, obviously we're trying to do care gap closure. That is the thing. And after COVID, a lot of women had gotten out of the habit of going in for their annual mammogram. And so we decided we would, instead of waiting for them to call or getting an email going, hey, it's time for your annual mammogram. I just got a text today. Hi, it's time for your annual mammogram. But instead make it really easy for the patient. So send them a reminder saying, hey, Crystal, it's time for your mammogram. Here is where you can schedule your mammogram. And here are the times and dates that they are available. Click to schedule. And people were able to schedule it. The first night we turned it on, and we turned out 5 o'clock. Like by the morning, we had 150 mammograms scheduled. Absolutely crazy. So much so that
log into a separate app, or was this just direct SMS?
Through. It obviously knows that it's me and verified that it was me, but I did not have to remember my chart password. I did not have to do any of those kind of things, right? And so much so that the head of that department actually called us and said, something's wrong with your agent. It's broken. I'm like, why? Well, we scheduled 150 mammograms yesterday. I'm like, yeah, you had 150 slots. We can't have that many, but we had slots open. Like, yes, but we don't have a way to handle that. The tax wasn't set up wrong. No, because if something goes, we see an abnormal result, we have to call somebody in 24 to 48 hours. We don't have people that do that on a regular basis. So turn it off. Like, no, let's figure out a different way to handle that so that we don't have to tell people not to come. And so we did, and we figured it out. But overall, I think it was a fantastic outreach initiative because it really combines operational excellence with our mission impact. It was automated outreach. It was scheduling. They got reminders. They knew the follow-up. It helped women get rid of the barriers that they have for screenings. If you have to call between 9 and 5, I don't know. I work between 9 and 5. I'm not thinking about calling to schedule that of all things. But getting something that I can do after hours is fantastic. And so it really demonstrated how technology can improve population health outcomes. To date, we've had over 4,000 appointments scheduled, over 2,000 screenings completed. And the big thing with that is over 217 abnormal findings detected. That were actually called and said, hey, Crystal, you need to come back in. We want to check you out again. And that's not a metric. That's people, real people who got care sooner because we removed the barriers. And that's where AI starts to become more of an efficiency, not an efficiency tool, but really a care delivery tool. And so out of all the things we've done since we've been here, that's one of the ones I'm most proud of because I really feel like we made a difference in the lives of people that we're trying to serve.
Yeah, and I think, as a technologist, that's why we're in this business, right? It's for, we're not in the business for technology, but the fact that we can help save lives, extend lives, through the use of better access to data or technology. I think that's why we're all here as technical folks. I was one of the interesting things that we kind of spoke about a little bit earlier was, AI is new, fast, generally using agile type development methodologies with some sort of DevOps deployment technique. Then you have kind of the EHR, highly regulated, generally waterfall type model. How did you rationalize that within the technology departments of, kind of that, I don't mean to be, it's not an insult, but in generally regulated systems need to move a little bit slower because you want to be really sure there's not a mistake in an upgrade or a rollout or a new feature release versus, the everyday AI, something new's happening. So how did you reorganize or how did you rationalize that within your?
No, so that's something that's been a lesson that we're working on. We're continuing to work on because it's so hard to predict the resources that we'll need depending on whatever new product we bring in, right? When you talk about the EHR, 6 months beforehand, I'm going to put in release on June 1st. So 30 days back from that, I have to have the testing done. 30 days back from that, I have to go look at the change notes. It is very cut and dry. You know exactly what everybody's doing along the way. When you start talking about agile, it's like, okay, well, I need to get a feed. So somebody's got to write a report. And then I'm going to play with it in AI for a while. And then I'm going to test it. And I was like, oh, wait, no, I need it tweaked. Well, you're done. The project was to write a report. Like, well, no, actually, I need to change it and do that. Or I need an interface. And I need it, the APIs to work together. So we try it. And I was like, well, that doesn't quite work right. So I need George to come and look at that again and sit with our techs and our people to do that. But George was done last week. Well, I can't do that. I can't say I'm going to have 3 projects and I'll use George for 40 hours. And that is something that's so hard in the IT shop, right? They don't know how to budget for that. And we're still trying to figure it out. I mean, we have a EPMO, we prioritize our projects and we get time, but they also know that most of the time our projects are part-time at a week, so I might need George week 1, that I might not even get until week 3. Overall, I'll probably need him 20 hours or whatever. And even when it's done and we sign off, something can happen. You never know. We put a new upgrade to our EHR. It might break the API.
Right.
The vendor does something, it might break the API, and we're going to need George to come and help us figure it out. And that's a part where it's very frustrating for both sides because they're like, well, we were done with it.
Yeah.
We were done. But no, we're not. And so, it really requires some dedicated resources. Executives have to align and go, well, this is a priority project, just like the EHR is. And, try to be, instead of it being competing priorities, actually a shared priority, and working between the CEO and the CIO and my team to try to figure out how we can make that work better. It's not perfect by any means. And even every single project, I kind of get here comes Crystal. But at the same time, we have to figure it out because there's a lot of good that we're getting. Obviously, the ROI stories that we have definitely show that. But we do like a small piece and then we extend and then we extend. So there's a lot of, they did it for the patient access and we did our voice technology. We did it for the patient access. We did 4 lines, then 10 lines, then we're up to 100 lines in our patient access center for our voice bot. Emily, who is doing phenomenally. She deflects 25% of our calls. She is, dropped our call abandonment rate from 7.3 to 3.9. Average speed to answer went from 27 seconds to 14 seconds. That's like in half.
Yeah, really.
And so, patients would try to reach us. They could only reach us 9 to 5. They were just, almost 10% of the calls were just like they got tired of waiting. So they hung up. And so now we're much, much more efficient. If you take your patient access center and you're able to do that, I think we figured if a call is 1 to 3 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes, we've probably saved this past year about 37 FTEs worth of work because that. And so it doesn't mean that we let 30 some odd people go. It means that they were able to actually help in much more advanced ways, doing the things that only humans can do. Emily can tell you when your appointment is, Mike. She can help you cancel the appointment. In some cases, she can reschedule depending on how we have the EHR set up. She can tell you where to park. She can tell you if you're allowed to get coffee in the building. Things that you don't get in the EHR as well, right? Or, by the way, there's a parking alert on Main Street, so don't go that way. Go around the back garage. Whatever we need to set up for her. And so she can do that. And with that and that humanistic touch, and of course, we also have it set up that it can go to a human. We have some people that still go, I want to talk to a human, darn it.
Yeah.
That's fine. Not everybody is ready for talking to a bot, right? But a lot of people do. And we've got a really high, like 4.7 out of 5 satisfaction rate from the people that do work with her. So it's great. It actually was better than we originally thought. But, we can't staff up for the shortages that are coming in healthcare. But we are able to do this and then let these people do things like, you're coming in, you're seeing the brain surgeon. Well, you need an MRI and a CT and this. That's not something that a bot can coordinate for you so you get it all on the same day, right? That's something a person has to actually look and figure out. And at that point, if you're calling about that, you're really stressed out and would much rather have a person that can be empathetic and caring and taking care of that patient and giving them that white glove service. With this product, not only do we see these great stats, she's had over 1 million calls this year, probably more than that. But also our Press Ganey scores went up. Ability to contact my doctor, ability for problems to be resolved by 4%. And Mike, getting Press Ganey to move up is really, really hard. But that just doesn't happen, overnight. That takes partnership of, operations, the scheduling team, IS, frontline staff, so they would know what was happening. Making sure that we had change control throughout and that they understood what was happening. The first day we turned it on, we had it on for 4 lines and the patient access center reps were there and they're like, you going to turn it on? It's on. Nope, you broke it. No, it's on. No, our phone's not ringing. Yeah, look, Emily's answering it.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Yeah.
So, it's just fantastic results. And so if you have something like that and it's successful, then people are like, wait, can we have this over here? Can we replicate it there? And so we have done that. And so now we put it in revenue cycle. She's actually answering more calls and more percentage of calls in revenue cycle than she is for the patient access center, because it's much more straightforward of a things like pay my bill, get this information, get that information. So again, letting those rev cycle people really tell you why XYZ costs something on your bill. But if you just need a copy of it or whatever, she can direct you in the right way. We now put it into pharmacy. And so she can help you refill a prescription or get more information about a prescription, that kind of thing. Next week, we're launching it into our facilities. And so it's not cookie cutter. It's not like I picked it up from here and brought it there. Mm-hmm. I picked up all the lessons from here and brought it there, and the learnings and what we need to do for change control. And how do we do the rollout? How do we communicate? How do we get the analysis so we can make sure that it works? And, we knew how to test. We had the test scripts, so we adjust the test scripts, those kinds of things. But every department's different. We go to facilities, and it's not Emily. It's Fred. Because it's Emily's twin brother, because it's for facilities. So it's facilities response and engineering dispatch. And it's a guy voice, not a girl voice. Right. And so if Fred launches next week, and he'll be able to say, oh, I have a light bulb out, Fred, what do I do? And it's like, oh, well, you can put in a ticket. Here's the link to it. And second phase then will be, let me put in the ticket for you. But Fred can also go, oh, wait, no, it's a water main break on the main hospital. That's urgent. Let me get you to a person right away. And the great thing about it is these agents are available 24/7. So we've actually had tens of thousands of calls happen overnight that have been solved, patients' problems solved, never having to talk to a human, which is fantastic. We couldn't do that before. She also answers in Spanish, which is something else that unless we had a translator, we couldn't always, provide that for our patients. So, just a lot of opportunity there. We're going to go to HR next. So, just to be able to use the same tool. And the thing is, we have this platform that we use, and we're now able to extend it in other areas and get more value from the same platform.
That's incredible that you're getting that kind of results. And I guess I have one question is, other than, changing the gender for the facilities people, how long does it take to retrain somebody from these models, retrain them from doing pharmacy to doing facilities to now you're going to HR? Is this a big, extensive effort, or is it fairly quick? And
well, AI is so much better these days. It can ingest stuff. So you have that common tribal knowledge, wherever that is, and you can feed it into these AI models and it can learn. There's still some like, oh, if somebody calls 111, that goes to orthopedics, 112 goes here. And there's some of that routing stuff too. But then there's other stuff. You feed in the question and answer pairs, you feed in, other things, and then you test. And you test a lot and you watch how she responds. And then there's tweaking. I think we've been tweaking Fred for 4 weeks before we go live. Yeah. So we were supposed to go live 2 weeks ago. True transparency. Supposed to go live 2 weeks ago. We're listening to Fred, listening to the calls and how he responded. We're like, we want to tweak it a little bit more so it's much more in tune. So people, you get one chance to make a good first impression. So we wanted to make sure that the people that are calling the line actually get something and they get the results that we're hoping for them to get. Will that be perfect? No. But we'll also be able to watch the logs in the back end to see how many times Fred messes up so that we can then take that information, put it back into the Fred bot and have it learn from mistakes so that it knows how to answer the next time.
That's great. And Crystal, your advice, having been through this, I think is invaluable for people to pick up on this in the podcast. And certainly the idea, I heard some of the trends is don't get enamored with the shiny object. You got to go after the workflow. Keep the patient, the member, the customer in mind of all this. You mentioned making sure you get a coalition of the willing, that it has to have representation from all the different functional areas, and that it is about change management, not necessarily the technology. So I wonder, as we kind of wrap up here, if you could give us some a profound type advice, to the person who's not quite as far as where you are today's and that wants to start this tomorrow. So it's Thursday and they want to start this tomorrow. what's that first step? Do you go to the CFO and ask for $40 million? Do you do?
Absolutely not. They're going to say no. Mike, I know if you have a CFO that's going to give you $40 million, I want to work for you, because that doesn't happen in any job I've ever had.
What do you say? You go to reorg things and we're going to reorg people into change, or you put some governance structure back. What is that first step that you would give to advice to create this transformation?
Don't start with the tool. Absolutely don't start with the tool. Don't be like, oh, we're going to get AI and it's going to fix everything, right? Start with a problem that's worth solving and people that can articulate the problem. We have a problem because we have a phone that keeps ringing, so we can't do this. We have a problem because we keep doing this same thing over and over again, so we don't have time to do this. Can you measure that? How much time are you spending doing that today? And then is there something that we can actually, find that we can, quantify the impact? So you process 100 pieces of paper a day. It takes you half an hour to process each piece of paper. That's blah, 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 whatever that is. And what is it affecting? Is it affecting your staff because they can't get their work done? Does it affect patients? Because like a prior authorization can take 15 minutes to half an hour for every prior authorization. Well, if you have a stack of them and you have a quantity of 1,000 a day or whatever, that means that tomorrow you'll probably have 1,500 because you only got through 500. And then that means that, Mike's authorization is going to sit there for 2 weeks before I can actually get to it in the queue. But if I can process it and get it done faster, what does that mean? That means Mike gets in for his MRI faster. That means that the staff isn't overburdened. That means that people aren't going, because it's a compounded thing where it's like, where's my authorization? Where's my authorization? And then you've got somebody answering the phone for something that's sitting in a queue that nobody can get to. So you really have to quantify that impact of what's happening. Map out that workflow like I talked about before to figure out what pain point you're trying to solve. Make sure you bring together everybody in the queue, from the people that answer the phones to the people that actually do the authorizations to the downstream, like what happens after you get the authorization. Make sure that the doctors know, make sure that all these kind of things. Then find that one piece for that quick win and then build momentum off of that. Don't try to eat the whole elephant. Try a little tiny piece and make sure that it's successful before you go on for other stuff. If you get that win, that you get your user community, you're able to show executive staff, you're able to show the CFO, look, we were able to do this in this amount of time. This is what I want to do next. And this is why I want maybe $3 million. And then eventually I'm going to want 40, but $3 million to be able to do this and then that. But let me show you along the way that I'm able to do this. And this is what we say, whether it's minutes, whether it's people, whether it's dollars, whether we're collecting dollars, and be able to have those metrics. But if you can't measure it at the beginning, then you can't measure it afterwards to be able to actually see the difference that you make. And I think that's one of the most important things you can do is make sure you can measure it, because that's how you provide that clarity.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's certainly very sage advice, Crystal. And from the experience, I think, it's very valuable for, the viewers of this podcast. Certainly very appreciative, for me personally as a technologist. I love to see the way you're doing this and how it's working out. So thank you for your time. I super appreciate it. And then as a little commercial, Innovaccer's podcasts are available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and most of the podcast platforms. So there's other ones out there that are as insightful as what Crystal's just given us. And again, thank you very much for your time, Crystal.
Thanks, Mike. Remember, technology is important. The trust that you build by putting that in is way more important.
For sure.